Chapter 1. The Unwanted Heirloom. The moving truck disappeared down Maple Street with a rumble of diesel and dust, leaving Liam Carter standing in the driveway of his first home. The colonial-style house wasn't much: peeling white paint, a sagging front porch, windows that hadn't seen proper cleaning in years, but it was theirs. After 4 years of cramped apartment living, he and Clara finally had space to breathe. "Honey, are you going to stand out there all day admiring our money pit?" Clara's voice carried from the front door, tinged with a familiar warmth that made his chest tighten with affection. Liam pushed his glasses up his nose and grinned, just savoring the moment. "How many times have we talked about having our own place?" "About 1,000, she laughed, disappearing back inside. "But we won't have much to savor if we don't start unpacking." He was about to follow when his father's rusty pickup truck wheezed into the driveway. Frank Carter climbed out slowly, his weathered face grim as he surveyed the house. At 63, the man looked older. Gray stubble covered his hollow cheeks, and his clothes hung loose on his diminished frame. "Dad, I thought you weren't coming until tomorrow." Frank didn't respond immediately. Instead, he walked to the truck bed and lowered the tailgate with a metallic screech. Inside sat an object covered by a paint-stained tarp. "Need to get this off my hands," Frank muttered, avoiding Liam's eyes. "Been sitting in my basement too long." Liam approached cautiously. Even through the tarp, the shape was unmistakable, long, rectangular, about 6 feet in length. "Is that?" "Your inheritance." Frank's voice carried an edge of bitter humor. "From your grandfather's estate. Should have given it to you years ago, but—" He trailed off, jaw working silently. Together, they maneuvered the covered object from the truck. It was heavier than Liam expected, and something about its weight felt wrong. Not the solid heaviness of quality wood, but something dense and unwelcoming. "What exactly is it, Dad?" Frank's hands trembled as he pulled away the tarp, revealing an ancient wooden casket. The sight made Lem's breath catch. The wood was faded and chipped, looking embarrassingly shoddy for something meant to hold the dead. Scratches and dents marred its surface, and the brass handles had turned green with age. "Jesus," Liam whispered, "why would Grandpa leave me this?" "Family tradition, I suppose." Frank's voice was hollow. "Been passed down the Carter line for generations. Now it's yours." "I don't want it." "Neither did I." Frank met his eyes for the first time, and Liam was startled by the fear he saw there. "Neither did your grandfather, but here we are." They carried the casket down to the basement, Frank insisting it belonged out of sight. The basement was unfinished: concrete floors, exposed joists, a single bare bulb casting harsh shadows. They set the casket in the corner, where it seemed to absorb the meager light. "Dad, what's the story with this thing? Why does it feel like you're afraid of it?" Frank was already heading for the stairs. "Some things are better left alone, son. Trust me on that." "What?" "Leave it alone, Liam." The sharpness in his father's voice was unprecedented. Frank paused at the bottom of the stairs, his knuckles white against the handrail. "Promise me you won't open it." The request hung in the musty air between them. Liam studied his father's haggard face, seeing genuine terror there. "Okay, Dad, I promise." But Frank didn't look reassured. He climbed the stairs without another word, and minutes later, Liam heard the truck start and drive away. Alone in the basement, Liam circled the casket slowly. Up close, he could see more details: water stains on the wood, places where the finish had worn completely away, revealing pale grain beneath. The lid was slightly ajar, just enough to reveal a sliver of stained satin lining. As a historian, Liam was accustomed to old things, artifacts that carried the weight of years. But this felt different, wrong. The air around it seemed colder, and he found himself unconsciously holding his breath. "Liam, what are you doing down there?" Clara's voice drifted from upstairs. "Just checking out Dad's gift," he called back, stepping away from the casket. "Well, come help me with these boxes. This bedroom isn't going to organize itself." Liam took one last look at the casket before heading upstairs. Clara was in what would be their bedroom, surrounded by labeled boxes and packing paper. Her dark hair was pulled back in a messy bun, and she changed into old jeans and one of his college shirts. Even covered in dust and frustration, she was beautiful. "What did your dad bring?" she asked, not looking up from the box she was unpacking. Just some old family stuff, nothing important. She glanced at him then, her brown eyes sharp with concern. You look pale. Are you okay? Fine, just tired from the move. But throughout the evening, as they unpacked and arranged their new life, Liam's thoughts kept drifting to the basement, to the casket and his father's fear, to the promise he'd made and the growing certainty that he wouldn't keep it. That night, after Clara fell asleep beside him, Liam lay staring at the ceiling. The house creaked and settled around them, unfamiliar sounds in an unfamiliar place. But beneath the normal noises of an old house, he imagined he could hear something else, a subtle wrongness emanating from below. He'd always been curious by nature. It was what made him good at his job, digging through historical documents and uncovering forgotten stories. The casket was just another mystery, wasn't it? Another piece of family history waiting to be understood. Around 2 in the morning, he gave up on sleep. Stooping carefully to avoid waking Clara, he slipped out of bed and padded downstairs. The basement door stood open, a rectangle of deeper darkness in the hallway. He found the light switch and descended. The casket waited in its corner unchanged. But in the harsh light of the bare bulb, it looked even more decrepit, like something that should have fallen apart decades ago. Liam approached slowly, his bare feet cold against the concrete. The lid was still slightly ajar, that sliver of stained satin visible in the gap. His father's words echoed in his mind, "Promise me you won't open it." The promises made in fear weren't really promises, were they? They were just words spoken to calm an irrational man. His fingers found the edge of the lid. The wood was rough, worn smooth in places by countless hands. He paused, heart hammering against his ribs. Just a quick look. What harm could there be? He lifted the lid. The hinges protested with a prolonged creak that seemed to echo in the small space. Inside, pristine white satin lined the casket, but it wasn't empty. A man lay inside, peaceful as if merely sleeping. He was middle-aged, with silver hair and kind features, dressed in an expensive-looking dark suit. His hands were folded over his chest and there wasn't a mark on him, no sign of violence or disease. He looked like he'd simply closed his eyes and drifted away. Liam staggered backward, his vision swimming. The basement spun around him and he grabbed the wall for support. A stranger, a dead stranger in his family's casket, looking as fresh as if he died moments ago. He squeezed his eyes shut, counted to 10 and looked again. Casket was empty. Nothing but stained satin and the musty smell of old fabric. No body, no evidence that anyone had ever been there. Liam's hands shook as he examined the interior, running his fingers over the smooth lining. Nothing. What the hell? He whispered. His rational mind offered explanations. Stress from the move, exhaustion, some kind of hallucination brought on by his father's strange behavior. That made sense. That was logical. But his hands were still shaking as he closed the lid and backed away from the casket, and as he climbed the stairs, turning off the light behind him, he couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed, that opening the casket had set something in motion. Upstairs, Clara was still sleeping peacefully, one arm flung across his side of the bed. Lem slipped in beside her, pulling the covers up to his chin. But sleep didn't come easily, and when it did, his dreams were filled with kind-faced strangers and the sound of creaking hinges. In the basement below, the casket waited in darkness, its lid closed tight against secrets that were only beginning to unfold.